Hey Wargamers, today we're going to build the can tower kit from Promethium Forge. This is a US based company and it's basically a soda can, beer can, whatever you want. That's the base here, and then it's surrounded by a scaffolding of MDF. So very simple materials, but I think it has a really nice outcome in the end, namely because it gives you some nice verticality in your terrain. This is one guy. It's about 6-7 inches tall, and on top of that you can stack these. They're interlocking and stackable, if you guys remember that old joke. So yeah, they're interlocking and stackable, so you can put as many towers as you want tall. You can have all sorts of different arrangements. They have different accessories that go on them, different bridges, different stairwells, ladders, you name it. There's a lot of different options that are built into this design here, and it's just a really nice staple unit for your terrain set. So today we're going to be building this. We're going to get to this point here. Obviously this isn't painted, but I think it's set up well for painting, and we can talk about that in a later video. All right, so what are you going to need to assemble this? Well, of course you're going to need a kit. You're going to need some sandpaper, some glue. I'm using Gorilla Glue here, super glue, but you could use white glue. Normal like Loctite super glue is going to work too, and then a hobby blade or a box cutter is going to be useful as well. So all right, let's get started. So this is the base kit here. You'll notice that I've already punched stuff out here because I wanted to, well, I had to make this guy, right? So that's where that came from. So there's that, and then there's also this guy here. So this is the actual platform part. So let's start with punching everything out. It should come out fairly easy just by the touch. And for a few of these things, you'll notice that there's going to be an extra ring. So you have this extra ring. That's nothing. You can discard that. Use that for terrain or basing later. But we do need this, so we'll set that aside. We need this, of course. Set that aside. Punch everything else out. This is another one of those things that has an extra bit here. Perfect for basing an objective or something else. So hold on to this. This is a nice bit of circle for you. All right, we are done punching stuff out. All right, so the next step here is just going to be to basically clean stuff up a little bit before we prime it. We're going to want to prime stuff ahead of time because, as you noticed here, if I want the can to be a different color than the scaffolding, I'll want to make that happen ahead of time. Otherwise, everything's going to be the same primer color, and that makes things more complicated. So here I just have this primed a different color to begin with. So we're going to do some assembly with the primer on. In fact, most of the assembly is going to be with the primer on. All right, so I'm just kind of shaving that down a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is terrain, so it's not going to have as much detail showing, of course, but if you are a stickler for perfection, then have at it. I guess get your sandpaper out, sand all these edges down, but it's not necessary for the assembly. Okay, and then there is one step that we can do before we prime. One thing that is not going to be interacting with the can directly, and that is building these guys here. Now, note these actually come out. That's one of the key aspects of the design here, is that they're easy to remove, easy to replace. They don't actually need to have any type of adhesive in there. They do just fine, but we want to assemble them ahead of time because they just don't interact with the can at all. So we can do that and get that over with and make sure we have a good seal between the different parts here without having to worry about the primer. So to do this, all we are doing is taking these different bits here and putting them around the outside of the platform. The key though is to make sure that you don't mess it up. I know, simple. But notice how there's a pointy end and a flat end. We want the pointy end up. And then of course having the detailed side on the outside of the platform, not on the inside, because that looks like crap. So don't do that. Do this. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and put all of our pieces around the outside. All right, now it doesn't hurt to double check to make sure that you get all the pointy ends up. No screw ups. All right, looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna start putting these guys around on the outside. And another reason why I started to do this before we primed was so that they can be inserted into the platform when we spray, and that way we ensure that the primer doesn't interfere with the fit between the male ends of the guardrails and the female parts of the platform. So just a little bit of a safety check to make sure that we don't mess stuff up for us. Make things harder than they need to be by filling up these connections with paint. So I'm just gently putting pressure on these in order to get them to fit. The other reason why we're doing this way as opposed to fitting all of these pieces into the top of the guardrail is so that we ensure that they line up with the platform. If we were to just put these parts into the top of the handrail, we might actually have them kind of splayed out or not quite lined up right for the platform, which is really what we care about. So that's the part that we need to be careful of. Okay, so we have our platform and handrails. They still are not glued down. This one's not even glued down to itself yet. So nothing to worry about there. We just need to make sure that has a little bit more time to dry. But yeah, these remain unglued. That way we can remove them. And yeah, so we're just going to take this, all of our scaffolding here, this guy, and this guy, go ahead and prime them, as well as our pop can, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I went ahead and sprayed everything. I have my can here that's primed. Notice it's a different color than the rest of the scaffolding. That's to make the painting process easier. Of course, if this was already assembled, it'd be hard to paint this a different color than that and not have any bleed over. So just for simplicity, make your life a little bit easier. First thing we need to do is make sure that the cap is off of here, the little tab. So we can just wiggle that a few times. Bam, done. Now we have this. And again, these are not glued down. And so when I flip it over here, I might lose a couple of them. But that's okay. All we need is a few to hold it up. Put those aside. All right, so this is the underside of our scaffolding here. Take our can, insert it with the smooth side up, because that's going to be the part that rests on the top. Then we take this guy, this ring. We're going to use a really coarse sandpaper. So this is P60, I think we said. I'm just going to sand around the interior to make sure it has enough clearance to fit on the can. The thing about priming this before is that this did make it just slightly too narrow to fit over the can. So we need to sand it to make that happen and fit nicely. See, now it fits perfectly, just like that. Roughly line up the notches here and here. And then get our trusty super glue again. We're going to put glue on the flat part of this piece and then inside the notch here. That's going to give us a good seal on both top and bottom. This is one place where having a little bit of work to smooth out the lines early on is going to pay off. So just insert that in the bottom, line it up on top. Do that 3 more times. Okay, so that gives us the majority of the work. These should dry, but you can already see it looks pretty much finished. The only thing we have to do now is attach this little cap here. That's to make this interior area not a bowl. So I'm just going to use some white glue for this. It's going to make it a little bit easier just to get a higher volume. It's not a huge surface area for connecting the 2 points. So I'm just loading that up and dropping it in here. Then I can kind of figure out where the bottom is by looking at how it fits. Make sure it's centered. And that's pretty much it. In fact, that is it. We just have to reassemble the guardrails here, put those back in. And it's done. So that's that. You can do exactly the same process to build the 4-can tower set. It's bigger. It has 4 cans instead of 1. But it's exactly the same process. You just build the platform, flip it upside down, put your cans in, put your bottom ring on, and then use that to attach the scaffolding. But pretty darn simple. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and as always, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video was made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you also enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Max Harrison, NoExcusesPanda, Paul Lueders, TauOswell, Nick Steele, Jared Egeler, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Cristofer Sarale, Youhei Penguin, Andy M. Young, Peter Benjamin Parker, and Giovanni DiMaggio.